Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sexy Business Podcast. As usual, I'm Lewd Neko, though for today I'm special Gyaru Schoolgirl Neko. And joining me is Spooky Dangerous.
Hello.
And today is going to be another little game overview and kind of first impressions. But this time, rather than looking at sort of our more traditional fare of Futanari visual novels and hardcore pornographic games, we're actually looking at something, one, a little bit more softcore, safe for work technically, just a little bit of ecchi, a little bit of spicy. But also, probably most significantly, we are looking at an FMV dating sim. So we are looking at real women.
Neuron activated.
Today we are going to be talking a little bit about the game Knowledge or No Lady, also known as Ladies School Prince, which is an FMV dating sim that's available on Steam and I think a couple other websites.
So, Neko got the chance to play through this whole thing on stream, and then I went and watched the VOD, which is becoming our regular pattern when it comes to working on a game. It depends, like sometimes we'll get a key or we've played it off, itch.io or whatever. But for this one, and especially because you're already kind of intending on playing through the whole thing, what kind of ends up happening is Neko plays to me and goes, "This was really cool, maybe we should talk about it on the podcast," and then I catch up. Which I think actually was really interesting for this one because the actual gameplay itself is kind of light and it's much more about the video experience. So I don't really feel like I'm losing out that much. Also, Neko's kind of based and just always makes the right choices, so it's not really that hard for me to feel like I'm there in the room of it happening. But do you want to give us like the lowdown, the kind of general what's going on, what happened?
Yeah, so I mean, I would describe this as sort of like a rom-com harem thing. It's definitely not the kind of visual novel you would engage with because it has like a super interesting and complex story. No, this is just sort of a bunch of silly like slice of life with kind of your archetypal characters. You have like the cool one, the cute and kind of bratty one. The butch lady who can step on you, the older doctor teacher lady, the international student, the one white girl,
Yeah, I thought
and
that
then
was
kind
really
of like
funny as well.
yeah, our token white girl, and then a kind of older sister type. So you already know kind of what to expect just based off of these character archetypes. You can probably look at the Steam page and figure out which one you're going to like. I knew that pretty quickly, even just in the game's introduction. And basically, you are the only boy at an all-girls school, because of course you are, and everybody is obsessed with you and thinks you're the coolest, and you basically just make choices that decide which character routes you're going to get onto, who you'll get to interact with. There are technically, I think, different endings, but they're usually pretty easy to find. So this isn't something that has like a super complex choice system, but it is still fun. It reminds me a little bit of, in a weird way, like Bandersnatch, the Black Mirror, like interactive.
Oh,
Yeah, Netflix special. Or, like they've done a couple of those specials where like you watch 5 minutes of a movie and then you make a little choice and then you watch another 5 minutes of a movie. That's very much what this felt like.
It does kind of the same thing. It feels like it's built the same way where you sit there with the kind of the looping thing while the choice menu's on screen, you press the button with your remote and it moves on. Although, spoiler alert, Bandersnatch doesn't actually have any snatch in it. So Knowledge or No Lady is possibly more entertaining for the Kuma audience, obviously.
Definitely. But yeah, so I did a full playthrough, I guess. I went through like one character's full route, though we got to experience quite a lot of the other routes. I'm not exactly sure how all of the routing works, but it seems like there's a pretty long common route, or the part of the dating sim where you get to interact with all of the girls. And even when you go on a particular character's route, sometimes the other characters just come back anyways, which I actually kind of liked. That it's not like, oh, you choose this one girl in the first 10 minutes and then that's the only girl you ever get to see.
Yeah, it's like a marriage in your playthrough. You pick one girl after seeing the lineup and then you're stuck there forever. Instead, it's more like, oh, remember that friend that you met earlier? She's back and she's trying to steal you from me, seductive harlot.
The game is also entirely in like a first person, almost like porno perspective, except for instead of watching them like suck dick or whatever, you're just watching them like do cute shit, and like have play games with you when you go on silly little adventures or have little dates and stuff like that. And I actually really enjoyed it. I first found this game on like Steam randomly a while back, and I ended up buying it during a Steam sale precisely because I was really interested in this like first person where you'd get to actually experience like the whole romance, unlike a visual novel with like traditional art where like they're only going to draw sort of the key scenes. There is something really like immersive and fun about actually being able to experience it all first person.
And I think the actual camera work of it is done pretty well. Like normally when you think about designing stuff for a game like this, or even for like a visual novel, you've got kind of your generic backgrounds, and then you've got, what are my different character expressions and stuff like that, and you're trying to how does this fit into a scene, but like most of the time it's just like one character left, one character right, and they talk to each other. With this, you get some nice kind of change in that formula where you get a lot of different camera angles. You can do a bit more dynamic stuff, and the background is just wherever they are. So from this one, my kind of hunch is that it is actually made by a film studio, and they had sets where they made classrooms, and all of the like main cast are, I don't know, idols or regular actors or something, and they have just like a whole bunch of extras, and they kind of make the scene pretty believable. Like there was no point where I was like, that's completely bonkers, this would never happen, like can happen in a lot of other kind of porn category stuff. So I guess they aren't going too ridiculous. But then like sometimes you're moving down a corridor, or you're like walking along the campus or whatever it is, and it has that nice extra set of immersion where you see a little bit more and you feel a little bit more like you're there, which I think is kind of cool.
No, yeah, the filming for this looked really interesting. At the very end of the route I did, during like the credits, there was like a little bit of like behind the scenes footage of showing them like actually filming it.
Oh, that's cool.
And so yeah, they did have like it looked like a pretty professional sort of set and like a director and like good like camera work and things like that. So I get the feeling this was a game that had like kind of like almost like a TV mini series like budget, because that's basically kind of like what it is. I was also really impressed with like the acting chops, which I know is like a weird thing to praise from like the smutty little dating sim game, but it's really hard to act at the camera because it's kind of what you're always told not to do is like do not look at the camera, don't talk directly to the camera, don't stare at it. So the fact that they have to kind of do the exact opposite, they have to be like literally up close and personal with the cameraman, where like sometimes he's putting his arm like right next to them or interacting with them in those sorts of ways, I imagine is like kind of an interesting acting challenge, and they're able to pull it off really well. I think each girl is very well done and very cute. I was actually impressed with just how endearing they were. I'm normally not a 3D women enjoyer. I'm usually very like, I don't even watch like actual 3D porn, like real people. I find it gross and weird. But I actually really enjoyed a lot of these girls. I really loved the international student. I think if I was gonna do another playthrough anytime soon, I would want to check out her route because I guess they characterize, Westerners are like bold, right? They're confident. They do whatever the fuck they want is how they're always sort of personality wise in like these sorts of media. So she's actually kind of like your wing woman, which is a really interesting role for like a dating sim love interest, to like be like, oh yeah, I think it's cool that you want to fuck all these ladies, let me help you. And that made her scenes really funny.
Yeah, because it means that, and like we said before with kind of the routing choice, if you pick somebody else, and it's Nico, right? I think it's
yeah, Nico's the international student.
Yeah, so if you pick somebody else's route and Nico shows up, she has like a really obvious supporting character kind of role in that story, which is kind of cool, and it gives her a reason to be there when you are pursuing other people. And I feel like when you're writing this big cast and that you don't want every other character to disappear immediately, you need to find reasons for them to continue to interact beyond the base excuse of just they are at a school and will bump into each other, which sometimes just isn't enough. So it feels like a lot of it was actually written kind of interesting, and you get to, and your dorm apparently is like next to other people as well, and you're kind of always figuring out how best you want to interact with people. But the actual choices they give you aren't so crazy. It's a little bit more like, what am I doing in the moment? Am I flirting with this person, or am I being goofy, or whatever? Which I feel like is pretty easy to play. Like, it's not like a, oh man, what's like the fucking the original classic dating sim thing was the, I told you 3 pieces of important information an hour ago. Can you remember them in this quiz? Any single question wrong will take you to the beginning of the quiz. And you're like, man, this sucks.
Yeah, it's a lot of like pretty like basic choices that usually just sort of inform like, do you want to go on this character's route or not? Or like you can get some kind of funny like bad endings or like fucked up like, oh, you obviously made the wrong choice. And I think I enjoy those kinds of choices. It reminds me a lot of like mean fuck games in a way where like sometimes the really stupid choice is fun to watch and then you just, rewind or reload. The only other like complexities of the choice system are there are some like items that you have to get at earlier points in a route if you want to get a certain character's like best ending, which is like pretty par for the course for a dating sim. In most cases, you'll get that item naturally by sort of succeeding at like, let's say each girl has 5 or like 3 like important events where you need to do the right things to get to her best ending. Then if you don't do the best things during ending or part 1, then you're not going to be able to get the best ending during part 3. So you might have to go back a little bit. It does tell you where, like, what items you were missing and where you can get it. So it kind of guides you to like, this item was in chapter 4. So even if you're like absolutely lost, the game definitely helps you a lot to make sure you can actually get all of those different little things.
Yeah, and I remember seeing right at the very beginning, you get the kind of open quest to visit all the different, oh fuck, what societies, whatever they're called.
Yeah, like clubs.
Yeah, and it's like, here's the 5 items you need to get, and it's like lollies, a magazine, a menstrual pad, pastry, and it's like, how they're fucking gonna write all of this into the story, and then seeing how it all kind of plays out. But it doesn't seem that bad. Like, again, we kind of said before we started recording, we're talking about how really simple this would actually be to make in Ren'Py, because it's all the same kind of basic stuff. The main difference is that you're dealing with video footage now, and so you just be lining up it as a cutscene. It has all the native audio. You put, you treat the video footage first and then put it into the game, and then you're setting up a looping video, which is the choice screen where you've got the choices on screen. Actually sitting there and ruminating and watching them act the loop, where the person asks you a question and then the main character, I don't know, is just fucking blankly staring at them for 45 seconds while you're thinking about the answer. But then the actor is stuck there for the whole loop thinking about it, going, oh, what's going on in there, my guy? I just asked if you want me to sit on your face. Why are you thinking about it so hard? Which is kind of funny, but like, it's not a complicated thing to develop, and like the inventory system and item system and stuff is pretty straightforward as well. So I think it would be really interesting for me to try and build something like that, and then try and find however I'm going to do the footage. Obviously, I'm not going to show up in it. I am deeply unhandsome, but it would be kind of cool, because I think I have the ability to do such a thing, and I always appreciate why we come and look at a lot of these other games and go, this is what it did well, this is what we think is cool, this was the part that made me come, this is what I was enjoying when I played through it. And then I go, okay, how can I use that to make the stuff that THM works on better? How can we replicate the success or whatever?
Yeah, it almost reminds me a little bit of Vero Studio, who is like a VR based studio, and they fund like a VTuber or a LewdTuber, and they have sort of this like goal, I think, of basically having like VR sex clubs. But they've done a couple of these little experiences where they've had various like porn stars and LewdTubers basically like volunteer their likenesses and record like interactive sort of like little VR experiences that are like first person, based on you interacting with that character. And while I'm not suggesting VR is the answer per se, because it's prohibitively expensive and very niche, I mean, you can even think of ways of like, if a LewdTuber wanted to do this, it would be hella easy, because you would just have to record yourself like in your little VR space, interacting with the camera, which a lot of VTubers already do, like in their content. It's sort of like whether it's porn or ASMR or just like live streaming. and then just add in like a couple little choices, and you could really easily like make a little game. And there's tons of ways where if you're already like an established VTuber or LewdTuber, you can use that to make money. But if you're not very established, then like use that to release it for free, and then just use it to build interest around you and your character's lore. Especially if you're like one of those people who likes having the VTuber that has like a whole universe and a backstory and things like that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. And putting something onto Steam for a free download for people is about 150 US with a submission fee. And then if something is free, it's going to be seen by a lot of people. So imagine the trade, like instead of spending $150 on Twitter ads or something, instead putting it on Steam and then it being seen by the same number of people, but also it exists there forever and sales will come around and whatever, like visibility loops and stuff, even if it's only a small little thing. You need to find a way to get it to about 2 hours. But as far as using a VTuber instead of a flesh tuber, you could easily set up something that's live 2D. They film the rig in front of something like a green screen. Like this episode, we're literally filming with me on ViaduTube Mini. Neko is in a Discord call with a green screen background. And then that's color removed. Then we're filming that in front of a green screen background again so that I can replace the background footage with the Knowledge or No Lady game footage. But like you could kind of do the same thing, and I guess it depends on how detailed the rig is, but where you just put the character onto a cleverly drawn background where it feels like they're interacting with the thing. Like if you can imagine some of the VR actual porn stuff I've seen is always kind of the same, where it's shot from the perspective of a guy lying on his back on the bed, and then they just kind of come and do stuff to his body. He's not really very animate or moving or anything. I imagine it's because they have to have the camera relatively stationary in place. But like you could kind of do the same thing with the characters interacting with this art drawn of of a person, and like you're putting that together, and then whenever you want to change a scene, he's like a different background and you film the thing that goes in front of that. But the VTuber can be looking at the background and kind of know where they're supposed to be and stuff like that. So I don't think it would be too hard. It's just all kind of filming and video editing and probably planning in advance where and what the fucking story is going to be, whether or not it is going to have a story. But I think it's super possible of a thing to accomplish.
Yeah, I would also just love to see like even like a live action American company take this on, because it seems like a really popular like Asian genre. Like if you go on the FMV tag on Steam, there's like a bunch of Chinese, Korean, and Japanese games that almost look identical, where like it is all like 6 girls who are into you, and there's a quirky premise where you were like 18 and the only boy they know in existence. And like I said, there's like a bunch of them. Like I just opened it up now and immediately there was like 10 just on like the first page. So like that would be something I would like to see, because the one thing that does sort of prevent immersion is when you don't understand the language and you have to constantly read subtitles. Which it gives you that, you can't like lean back and just entirely relax into it and like feel like they're actually talking to you. Like I'm always constantly aware of like, oh, I am not Chinese and I can't speak Chinese. So I would really love to see like
aware of that. we watched the FMV. I watched the gameplay of you, and then immediately afterwards was like, hey, do you want to learn Chinese with me?
So it'd be interesting to see like what an American or Western take on this genre would be like.
Well, imagine Brazzers, right? Brazzers gets together and gets their stable of actresses together. And then not only is, I guess it's the equivalent of our idol culture, I suppose. But you have like the top 5 big names in Brazzers all come together, and where it's like Natasha Nice, Angela White type shit. And then they come and the main character is supposed to be like a stand-in for you, and some funky scenarios happening. But I think the star power in itself would be just so ridiculously different. So I wonder why a company like Brazzers that already has all the resources available, where it would just take like a day in working with the Vampire to build this different kind of experience, hasn't done something like this yet.
Yeah, I mean, we also know like ASMR is functionally very similar to like what these videos are doing, or what these kinds of games are doing, except for in the case of ASMR, it's usually just one person. And obviously it's not always romantic, but there is such like a huge category of like romantic, like taking care of you and being your friend. And people make up really complex stories for like the little ASMR videos they put on YouTube. And like again, it's like I think that would be another like really easy way to like continue to promote your content if you were an ASMR artist. Whether 3D or 2D, just chop up one of your videos into like a little game of sorts. I mean, I've seen ASMR roleplay videos that are like already an hour long, and they have a really basic concept. Because the thing about ASMR is you can kind of drag anything out. By just adding in like more pleasant noises or more like moments of little bits of intimacy. And that would be like really interesting from sort of like an audiophilia perspective. That was like one thing that I almost wanted more out of this game, or even just visual novels in general. I'm surprised they haven't taken advantage of like ASMR more, because it's such a huge genre, and it'd be really easy to just make like a visual novel the whole concept is like it's also ASMR. And there is one that exists that I know of, but I haven't seen as much of that as I would have expected at this point.
That seems like it would work really well with the FMV, especially because your head is basically the camera, and they put the girls very close to you a lot of the time. So they could very easily have the microphone very close to, like, next to the camera, and then have it be like they are whispering into your ear, and then you can kind of see the side of their face or whatever. I think it's super doable. And I think you're right as well. Because Renpai, it's very easy just to put audio stuff in there. There's no reason to not lean into ASMR territory. I'm definitely not the guy for the job. All of THM's games just have really
Silent.
shit audio. They kind of start out with a couple of unique tracks, and then I just fucking forget to change the track whenever anything is happening, or like there's a character theme. It's never changing the character theme. You just get stuck with whatever the last song was forever, because we just haven't gone through and done it. And like Shackles has some sporadic voice acting, but it's been hard to go through and complete it all, especially because it's such a big game. And so it's just like, well, what am I going to be doing? And I've said a few times on the show before, I'm such a fucking porn on mute kind of viewer that I'm just so not the guy. But I really wonder if there is just like a bunch of audiophiles that are desperately waiting for the that full on girl whispers in your ear experience, you know.
I will say, I think this game was definitely like actually really good. I don't think I was expecting much when I kind of bought it. I kind of half bought it because I was like, FMV dating sim sounds silly as fuck. And I was just like, this looks so pandery, and like that's because it is. I'm gonna play it for the lulz, and I actually ended up really enjoying it. It's about $7 on Steam. I bought it on sale, I think, for like 4 or 5. And in that $7, you get like about, based on kind of review playtimes, I think like 8 to 10 hours of like footage or gameplay or replayability. Because just my one playthrough of like one girl's entire route took me about like probably like 3-ish hours if I hadn't been streaming. So I imagine once you actually start exploring all of the different routes and all the different characters, this easily becomes like I said, like it is basically a TV mini-series amount of investment. And I would say $7 is worth it if you are someone who is, into this kind of genre or curious about this sort of like cute little rom-com. It's very like wholesome and like feel good. Like I found myself kind of like giggling and smiling to myself a lot during this. There's also a lot of just like legitimately funny moments. I know I keep bringing that up, but I was actually really impressed with some of the comedic bits. Like there's this whole part with like this maid cafe with one of the characters, and she's basically concerned about being outed as like working at this kind of like seedy maid cafe or like hostess club. And when that does happen, to basically distract her attention from the rumors being spread about her, the main character puts on the maid outfit and like runs around the school, and people are like goofing about it. And that was really funny. I liked little moments like that where just random stuff
You
happens.
missed the best
It does
part.
feel
You
what?
missed the best part where he gets arrested by the police, and then one of the police officers asks if he can borrow the outfit.
It's important. Everybody wants the maid outfit.
So yeah, I do agree. It does have a nice sense of humor. It's not trying to be very serious and dramatic. and it's not trying to be insanely erotic either. I think it's just hitting that nice middle where dating sims are, I kind of originally were sought to be before we perverted it, and it was just kind of like a wholesome romantic experience where you are actually getting to know a person. Like that's kind of the designed experience of dating, not fucking sim, which I think makes a bit more sense. And I feel like this game does a bit more of a better job of that because you are kind of hanging out with people, and it is a bit more like a friendship simulator, where you're hanging out with people. But it does have lots of cool, funny asides, let's say.
And I mean, I personally really appreciate like softcore content, mostly because I've said this so many times. I'm a huge outfits person and a huge like hairstyles person. So the fact that like all of these characters, I actually get to see them change into different outfits and different hairstyles a lot in this game. That was like a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, there's even these sorts of like funny like fantasy sequences. So sometimes the character will just sort of like have a horny daydream in the middle of nowhere and start imagining two of the girls in like sexy outfits based on something happening in the game. Or you get like little random moments. Like there's one where you're telling like a ghost story and all of the girls start becoming the characters in the story. So you get to see them in like these like really like weird, like kind of like Asian fantasy inspired outfits that you wouldn't expect in a game like this. But they come up with little excuses to have those sorts of like fun moments. It's like very slice of life anime. Like it reminds me of watching a slice of life rom-com anime where they have like those like random tangential moments where you just want to see the cute girls doing random cute things, even if it makes no narrative sense. And I really like that.
Yeah, I think humor is something that should go well with sexy content. I feel like, especially more modernly, because like classically, the porn was always like, "Hello, yes, I am here under a thinly veiled excuse, and then we are going to have sex," and that was always kind of silly. But nowadays, it's a little bit more goofier, and like some porn companies in particular do lean into it a little bit. One that I've seen a little bit more recently is Oopsie. It's literally what it's called, and it's it's just like, here is a ridiculous situation, and then it just somehow ends in them having sex. But like the way that they film the actual porn intro is like a YouTube short. It's like really fast. There's lots of cuts, lots of ridiculous things happen, and then it like goes into regular kind of porn editing, which I as well thought was very interesting and different. And it kind of also is similar to what THM is doing now with the newest game. Is like Shackles is incredibly serious. There's probably no jokes in it at all, really. And it's just like trying to focus really hard on presenting this dominant vibe from the characters. Whereas the newest game, the Grand Butt Sex Hotel, which obviously has a serious title also, is leaning in a much more funny direction where funny, silly things are going to be happening, but then there's like also sex scenes. And that's more because of Marcy's influence, and that's like her strength. But her and I are always like shitposting in our fucking Discord DMs about what's this ridiculous scene that we could be doing, what's this visual gag that we could be adding to it. So it is going to be really funny, but then like all the same kind of sexy content is going to be there to try and connect with a different kind of audience. Because that's like, if we just keep making the same game with different flavors, we'll never grow or go anywhere different. But trying out this and like leaning into her strengths might be something cool and exciting for people that, you know, enjoy the good stuff we do already and are looking for something different, or people that are looking for that more lighthearted kind of experience. So I'm interested if stuff like Knowledge or No Lady kind of came around from that same idea, where they're like, what if we took, you know, this more sillier style to make a more, you know, lighthearted kind of adventure is probably the wrong word, but more of an adventure for the main character, and he gets to meet some people and do some stuff. Whereas dating sim is getting to a point where people are constantly trying to innovate on it. Like, I don't know if you could say My Side is a dating sim, but it feels like in the same way we're trying to, you know, elevate this genre. And, you know, Doki Doki Literature Club, the same thing is like, how do we elevate this? And like maybe FMV is the next step.
Yeah, it almost seems like kind of a spin-off or a variant of like K-dramas, which have gotten really
Mm,
popular in like the West, especially in the past decade. And those are like, you know, again, they're very narratively intense, where like every episode something crazy happens. At least that is what I have garnered from my friends who are really into K-dramas. And they're also usually really focused on romance and attractive people. A lot of people watch K-dramas because they find either the girls and or guys like very hot. And so this almost seems like a just a spin-off of that, of like, okay, we're just gonna take out like the extremely high narrative stakes where like people are dying and like insane, like cheating plot
mm.
lines are happening and stuff like that. And we're just gonna keep the cute parts and the romantic parts, but now it's focused on you, the viewer. So you don't have to pretend to self-insert. You actually just get to do that. You are the self-insert. You are the main character.
It's not a self-insert if the director is the person that put you there.
Exactly. I didn't have a choice.
I have been
I'm the most
inserted.
popular boy.
If you want to know more about that, look up insertion on Google. That'll, that'll help you out. But that's kind of our episode today. Filmed on April Fool's Day, of all days, and we get to talk a little bit about the goofier side of adult content without actually making any April Fool's jokes. We had actually talked a little bit about some of the stuff that we could have done. We considered reading out Das Kapital verbatim, which I thought it would have been deeply funny as an episode. But it unfortunately doesn't have any sex scenes. We decided against it.
Darn it.
That's going to be on my tombstone. I wanted to read Das Kapital, but it didn't have any sex scenes, so I put it down. But that is us for the week. That is the Sexy Business Podcast, where once again we're exploring something new and cool in the space and seeing what kind of things that can teach us as creators, what kind of things that we get to learn from it that, you know, you, the viewer, is enjoying in that kind of genre, so that we can all be focused on making cool and better content to make you come. That's why we're here. That's why you're here, I assume. Otherwise, put that thing away. And when you have both hands on your desk, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and then write a comment as what you think about FMV games, because there's a lot of different stuff to divine from this genre, and I'm interested to go and explore a little bit more of myself and maybe see if it's possible for THM to create such a product. So I don't know, stick around. Maybe we're talking about it more in the future, or maybe we'll have some more cool interviews with other creators in the space so that you can get to know some of your favorite creators are like behind the screen, behind the sexy drawn lady. Are they a real person or are they an AI robot unmasked? You'll never know until you stick around. Until next week here on the Sexy Business Podcast.